Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Every Scar Tells a Story. We are Cristina and Alejandra, and we are thrilled to be joined today by Virginia Carnesale. She is a breast cancer survivor. She's the founder of Stage, which is a online support resource for cancer patients and their supporters. You can shop there. You can learn there. She has everything you could ever want to help you through your healing journey. And we cannot wait to have a conversation with her today. Virginia, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. We're so happy to have you.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. I'm such a fan of you both and, of course, your beautiful brand that you've created. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Virginia. Christina and I are obviously huge fans of yours and the incredible business you've created and the mission you've created, but we've met you in the last couple of years. So we know this Virginia, and we'd love ourselves and the audience to hear a little bit about you before this big scar. Obviously, the podcast is called Every Scar Tells a Story, and we're here to talk about the scar, but just a little bit about who you were before that came into your life.
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm originally from Santa Barbara, California. I'm the youngest of four kids. Like growing up, I was a competitive gymnast and also loved singing, dancing, dressing up, which is funny because I think later that comes out in my career choice. I've worked in retail and fashion for 20 years, lived in big cities. Before my cancer journey, I was living in New York, a demanding luxury fashion job, loved every minute of it. And I guess you could say I was living that sort of Sex in the City single girl lifestyle, which seems super glamorous, but it was a work hard, play hard mentality. I really am the type of person that values friendships. I'm a long lasting, loyal friend, and, family and connections are really important to me. And then also just my work colleagues became like family over the years. I ended up moving back to where I grew up in Southern California the year before my cancer diagnosis. And to be closer to family and, was in the middle of a transition when I got the news.
Before we get into the news, I just have to say I'm also the youngest of four. I also lived in big cities. I also did the Devil Wears Prada lifestyle and I loved it. I was also very
Yeah.
work hard, play hard. So I just feel like so many parallel life moments here.
New York City life. I'm telling you, I think so many people that we speak to in both of our stories, a lot of our scars came right after that huge grind. It's that work hard, play hard mentality that you said, where you aren't really paying attention to your health. And then suddenly you're like hit by a train and puts things in perspective. So give us a little bit of that transition that you were going through. You moved back to your hometown. You left New York City. What are you doing there the week before you got your diagnosis?
Geez. Okay. So I'd actually moved back to my hometown to be near a family member that was at end of life after a long cancer battle, which definitely weighed heavily on me living on the other side of the country. So I'd moved back to be closer to my father and grateful that I got 6 months with him before he passed away. But those were hard times, and I had just started, taking a break from my 20-year demanding career to focus on myself and my family and like kind of what I wanted to do next. And I had started interviewing again. And I literally went for my first mammogram in the fall of 2018. And to your point about, living in the big cities, a fast lifestyle, not really paying attention to your health, I had um, I had waited a couple of years past the recommended guideline to get my first mammogram. And so I didn't end up going until age 43. And, it is what it is. I can't take it back. But I finally, once I was living a slower lifestyle, like just finally made the time and went and did it. And I was on the East Coast. I had flown out to New York, I think for a job interview, because I was evaluating all my options at that time. My doctor urged me to get back into the radiology center right away when I got home for more imaging. And she didn't really say much more than that. And that that trip, I put it out of my mind. But of course,
Mhm.
I got back and then, they told me I had suspicious calcifications in my right breast and it was pretty much across my whole breast. And basically what that ended up being was cancer, pre-cancer in the ducts. So getting that news that I had cancer was pretty earth-shattering and just a shock. I didn't have any symptoms. I didn't have any lumps or things of that nature, but it was sizable enough that with the standard of care in the US, they recommend taking it out. And for me, that meant I would have to have a mastectomy.
My gosh, that is a lot, especially after just having been with your father, going through
Mhm.
Mhm.
this to then get
Yeah.
that. I can't even imagine all the emotions, all the feelings, all the fear.
Yes.
Were you just feeling it all? Were you in shock or were you kind of like in sometimes, people go into like, oh, just like military mode almost and like, let's deal with this? Or was it a little bit of like denial? What were those feelings
I
like?
mean, it was both. I mean, even my family was a bit in denial.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
thought,
I
did
mean,
they
it's
mix
so
up
fair.
my results with somebody else? Because,
Mm-hmm.
I was a
Yeah.
pretty healthy person as far as I, knew at the time. I have the typical risk factors like smoking or being overweight or, heavy alcohol use or, things that can raise your risk for breast cancer, right?
Yeah.
I didn't have the
Right.
obvious risk or even a family history that I knew about. And
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
but so of course I was in denial. Yes, absolutely. I did get into kind of like military mode. I immediately got like well, 3 second opinions. So I got 4 opinions by 4 different surgeons, and they all said the same thing. So it was like,
Okay.
guess I got to accept that and get on that
Yeah.
train.
I just have
And I
to
think,
say, for surgeons, like, that's very impressive. I think
Mm-hmm.
people talk about that, but that's actually a lot of work to find 4 different doctors, get in,
yeah,
have the
yeah.
testing. That's impressed by your, like, rigor and follow through with it, because that's hard. It's not easy. That alone is exhausting, just going to get all the
Well,
opinions.
it's true. And I was, it was just kind of kismet that I was in between jobs because I never would have had time to do that when I was managing a large team. And where I live is about 2 hours out of a major metro. And so when I got this news from the regional care provider, I just thought, well, let's go to
Mhm.
the larger research based institutions that
Yes.
had access to.
Yeah.
And I was lucky that I was able to figure out, you know, who I wanted to see and try and got in and then those 4 opinions like really solidified what that go forward plan needed to be. And so I did what I needed to do. And obviously there was, as a woman at the time who was single and didn't have a family yet, I was feeling a lot of concern around being disfigured from whatever this surgery was going to
Mm-hmm.
entail. And the doctors kept telling me, like, you really only need to do one side of your chest, but you might opt to do both for cosmetic reasons. And so, again, maybe a bit overachiever of me. Like, I went and met with 9 plastic surgeons. Yeah, 9.
I
I
love your overachieving.
I
Yes.
know who I'm gonna ask when I need plastic surgeon advice. Like, this is amazing.
Yeah. Well, yes, I did learn a lot through that. And I think what I ultimately what it came down to me is I needed to find a practitioner that listened to my concerns, that I felt like understood where I was at in my life and was making a recommendation to give me the best possible cosmetic outcome. And so I ended up with a female who was roughly my same age. This is such an individual choice, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I found that when I met with older, very experienced plastic surgeons that had been doing this for 30 years, they wanted to give me the same scars that they gave to women 30 years ago. And that was just not going to work for me. So I went with someone who I felt was more progressive and really cared and took a lot of pride in how their work turned out. And obviously, my health was the biggest concern. We needed to get the cancer out, but I wanted to mitigate any future insecurities that I would
Mhm.
have about my new chest, I guess.
Yeah.
No,
I
that
mean,
makes sense.
It totally makes sense. I can relate to that.
Yeah.
When I was told I needed surgery, it was the first thing that I thought. I was single, didn't have a family, living in New
Yeah.
York, and I just thought, I'm going to look so different than every other woman out there. So I totally get it. So backtracking a little bit, you met with all these doctors, both medical doctors and then the plastic surgeons, and you
Mhm.
came up with a plan.
Right.
This is, I guess, the moment that like your scars came to be. How did you
Yeah,
get
like
these scars in the end?
what
Yeah.
what was kind of like the timeline for you? So you meet with the 4 doctors, you meet with the 9 plastic surgeons. Did things move quickly, slowly? You know, how was the surgery? Kind of that little
Mhm.
timeline.
Sure. Yeah. So I was diagnosed. I had original mammogram at the end of October, positive diagnosis in, early November. Took me a few weeks. I opted to do IVF and do a round of egg
Mhm.
freezing because there was a possibility that I would have to do chemotherapy depending on what they found in the tissue that they removed. They were optimistic that that wasn't going to be the case for me, but I just didn't want to take any chances because even though like I hadn't, I'd waited in life to, pursue um, my dreams of motherhood, I didn't want to take that off the table for myself. So I went into a round of IVF and, I saw all the various surgeons in December and then it was the holidays. So I made my decision and then getting on the schedules landed me sometime in January. And frankly, in retrospect, I was a little bit too long. So my initial diagnosis, the surgeon told me just get it out within 8 weeks. And like I always tell women, like balance that with speed, right? Balance your need for wanting to do your research and finding the right team for yourself, but also get it out as soon as you can. And so I ended up with 2 procedures in January. One was like a called a nipple delay, and when they're worried about whether they'll be able to preserve a nipple because now they're doing nipple sparing surgeries, which is pretty amazing, but not
Yeah.
everybody's a candidate for it. So I had a mid-month procedure where they made the actual incisions below the breast. They like lift up your tissue, which is wild. And they sampled my nipple from the inside. So, going into that surgery, I was like, okay, here we go, and I was sort of wishing that I had maybe gotten artful pictures of my breasts maybe before this process.
That's
But
good
like,
advice. Yeah.
yeah, it just ran out of time. And so I remember taking pictures in the mirror the morning before my surgery and,
Yeah.
just thinking, gosh, I want to remember what I looked like before. And anyway, so I had the first surgery and then coming out of that, the doctor informed me that thankfully they were able to spare the nipple because the cancer wasn't too close, but unfortunately the cancer had spread to 3 lymph nodes.
Thank gosh.
So yeah, that was when stuff got real.
No.
So when I woke up from that nipple delay surgery, my doctor shared with me that good news, the cancer is not in your nipple, so that can be spared. But unfortunately, we found cancer has traveled to your armpit and it was in 3 lymph nodes. And ultimately, then I decided when it was time for my mastectomy 2 weeks later that I was going to do both sides.
Oh my goodness. So you
Mhm.
basically went from thinking you were going to have one scar to then how many scars did you end up having in the end?
3.
3.
They did the, nipple delay, which is like that procedure I told you where they lift up
Mhm.
the skin. They made the mastectomy incision, which was underneath the breast line. But then when they went to do the double mastectomy, of course, I had the other scar. And then in an abundance of caution, they remove a cluster of lymph nodes out of your armpit just to make sure they get all the cancer out and they overcompensate. I ended up with 19 nodes being removed. So I have a scar in the middle of my armpit, but there was only 3 that were positive, thankfully.
Yeah.
Yeah, because your lymph nodes are the pathway to the rest of your body, which is like really scary. Anyway, they removed that cluster of lymph nodes, which, leads to a whole host of other complications down the road with a condition called lymphedema, which I ended up getting mildly in my right arm. But what that means is that like fluid gets trapped in your arm and you're constantly like wearing compression garments and doing massage and physical therapy to try to get it out. And ultimately, several years later, because like my surgery was in 2019, in 2023, I ended up getting another surgery on my arm to address kind of the flow of the lymphatic system. So I ended up with 3 more scars from breast cancer. I have 6.
6 scars. So you're like a map of
Wow.
scars. How did you feel after? First of all, I should ask, did you have to go through treatment after your surgery? You
I did.
did. You
Yeah,
did.
because once they analyzed the tissue they took out in the mastectomy, they told me mine was hormone driven. So that made me high risk for recurrence, like almost 30%, which, 1 in 3, no thank you. So
Mhm.
the type of
Mm.
breast cancer I had was very well studied and responded well to the medications that are out there. So they put the data in front of me, and it was like, if you do 4 rounds of chemotherapy and 10 years of endocrine therapy, this medication called tamoxifen, then your recurrence risk goes down to less than 5%, which is less than the average person. Yeah. So anyway, I signed up for that plan.
How long was your treatment?
Well, the 4 rounds of chemo were 3 weeks apart, so it started in March and it ended in by June. I chose to do cold capping, which is a kinda like a
Mhm.
cryotherapy you can do on your scalp. It basically involves, like, strapping, ice packs to your head
Mhm.
during your chemo infusion. It just leads for really long days. But because of the type of medication that I was on, it could potentially cause permanent alopecia, and like that was not going to work for me. So
Yeah.
I went through the kind of grueling effort of the cold capping to preserve my hair follicles. It didn't keep the hair during treatment. I still lost 90% of it, which that was a whole journey in of itself, but it obviously worked my long-term results. I was
Yeah,
very
I mean,
grateful for that.
for those that can't see her, her hair is beautiful, flowing, beautiful
Thanks.
locks.
I want to know, like, right coming out of surgery. So, like, before you're even in treatment or radiation, like,
Yeah.
you come out of surgery. Usually, you've got like big bandages and stuff on. What were your feelings right then? Because that's the beginning of the scar, right? That wound, that incision. It's
Yeah.
obviously not a scar yet. It's still pretty open, maybe stitches, scabby. But did you interact with that part of your body at all? Did you look at it? What were your
Mm-mm.
feelings around the incisions right afterwards?
I didn't. Frankly, I kind of was just in get through it mode. I, was very, very bandaged. I didn't even see anything for almost 2 weeks, I guess I would say. You have drains. So I was more focused on making sure that I didn't get infection and learning how to clear the drains. And also, you feel very vulnerable or you feel very fragile, not so much emotionally, but actually physically. So
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I just tried to baby myself. I slept on a 45-degree or 30-degree foam wedge for like 6 weeks. I followed my doctor's advice like to the letter. I took the medication to stay ahead of the pain. I, made sure I slept as much as possible, and like that little hibernation period, I guess,
Mhm.
was really important for healing. And then as soon as I could move, it's a delicate test and see how you do kind of thing. I mean, you can't lift your arms over your head for like, I don't know,
Right.
weeks on end. And then also, you can't lift more than 5 pounds for many weeks. And so I was just in baby myself mode and not so much concerned with, what were my scars going to look like because, um, yeah, that just wasn't the focus in the early phases. But I will say, once the bandages came off and, you know, I had a bit of swelling and I'm sending pictures to my doctor. I'm thinking, wow, I look like Frankenstein. And I just had to trust I had to trust the process and trust that my surgeon was had done me right. And that I think was the research that I had done in selecting her. But also one really important thing that I did was part of my selection process. I did not go to anybody who couldn't show me before and after pictures of
Mm.
somebody with similar anatomy to me to a similar procedure that I thought looked good. So I just had
Smart.
to trust and have faith that I had chosen well, and like we were in this together, and this my surgeon was going to do me right. So I wasn't letting myself get attached to what it looked like in the interim stages, because it's really a process.
The way that you described, though, being like so physically vulnerable right after surgery, I haven't heard people talk about it quite with those words before. And I think that's so true. Like right after surgery, you've been opened up and you're like not put back together yet, right? It's like the skin's going to start growing back together, but it's not. And so that physical vulnerability, I don't know, just the way you described it really, it like I had C-sections, but it reminded me of like that, just physically feeling not all there and very afraid of that area because
Hmm.
I didn't know how strong it was, what it could take, how
Hmm.
much movement it could take.
Yeah, it was very well put. I also had like was basically like transported back to the time when I had surgery the way you said it because
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's something that sometimes we forget to do is actually baby ourselves because we're so
Hmm.
rushed to try to heal. Often we try to push ourselves, and in the end, I think that does backfire. So it's good to know that it's actually better to baby yourself, to be fragile with your body, treat it like it's fragile
Yeah.
while it's healing because
Yeah.
it'll ultimately heal faster.
Well, and I learned my lesson really because, they tell you that you can return to driving after 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. And I tried to run an errand and my chest was so sore the next day. I swelled up. And I also felt like my implant was dropping a little bit,
Oh,
which,
gosh.
yeah, which was, everybody's different. Some people their bodies are more resilient in that way. And I just had to learn I can't do this. So I took 3 more weeks to not drive. So if you can what that means, I definitely think that was a key thing that I learned is just listen to your body and whatever you can do to baby yourself. Take this one time when things are removed off of your plate
Mhm.
and really honor your healing.
Yeah, that's beautiful advice. At what point after you've gone through everything and the scars are no longer wounds, did you start to pay attention or acknowledge them or have any thoughts towards them? Or did you even?
Well, of course, yeah. I think once it came time to start wearing normal clothes again, because when you're first of all my bras were thrown out. You have to rebuild that whole collection, which I was happy to do because I had a one size bigger chest. But
Understand.
you definitely have different needs in terms of support and shapes. But as I was going through active treatment before cancer, I had like an A cup and I like to wear a lot of pattern. I would wear a lot of one shoulder styles or off the shoulder, or you may be a low V. And that just didn't work for me when I was going through this. You want to cover up, you do not, well, and then after chemotherapy, I had radiation also. So that was a journey in and of itself. And that was the whole field from here to here, like all the way over here. So
So
you
from
know,
chin to your waist,
sorry, collarbone. Yeah.
or collarbone to your waist.
Collarbone to right below the bra line.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah. So you need to protect your skin, which for 2 years really after that during the healing. So protect it meaning from the sun. And
Yeah.
so that caused me to choose different shapes in apparel when I would go outside
hmm
for walks and also swimwear, for a couple of years after, literally 2 years after treatment, I was wearing t-shirt style bikini tops because
Yeah.
you want to make sure that you don't have lasting hyperpigmentation. You're also more vulnerable to skin cancer after a breast
Great.
cancer experience and having been treated or having experienced radiation. So all of these things like the self-care and the babying just like continued, right? But then from a fashion perspective, so there was the practical needs and then from the
Mhm.
fashion perspective, I still wanted to be on trend. I just had to dress for a slightly different body, I guess, and needs, right? So I guess I became cognizant of my scars after that 2 year period of time. So one, I wanted to cover up the scars, but mine were pretty strategically hidden underneath the folds of my chest. So,
Mhm.
you're not going to see that unless you're wearing a certain type of bathing suit. So I would always be like making sure that those were covered. But then over time, when I went back to kind of lower cut tops and things like that, it's like I'm always self conscious about my radiation tattoo, which is like, in the middle of my chest and looks like a freckle, but to me, it looks like a tattoo, right? And I'm wondering when I'm in yoga class and you can see kind of like my drain scars, or you might, if I'm in a certain workout top, maybe a scar peeks out the side. You're cognizant of those things, but no one else cares. Like, you are thinking that people care and they do not care, you know?
Yes, it's
And
so true.
my gosh. And also, of course, like in intimate moments with a significant other, you're so worried. Are they going to like be turned off my scars? They don't care, you know? They do not
I'm
care.
so happy you brought that up because that's
Mhm.
Yeah.
something we've heard a lot, that people feel really
Yeah.
self-conscious in front of new partners, partners of 20 years in
Mhm.
those moments. And it's true. Your partner doesn't care. They love you for who you are, not for the scars that are on your body. So
Yeah.
I'm really happy that you brought that up because it's something that a lot of people feel and
Mhm.
are afraid of when they hear that they're going to have
Yeah.
scars in some of those
Yeah.
areas.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the other complication that comes with a mastectomy is the loss of sensation. There are more
Mm.
progressive treatments now to reconnect the nerves, but not everybody's a candidate for it, and it's not very widely available. So most women are experiencing complicated feelings about the loss of sensation on top of it. And then you're just like, you don't really want anybody to be in that
Yeah.
area. On top of the feelings of insecurity of maybe how they look. So it's just a complicated journey. I think, over time, talking to other patients, other survivors, and hearing them share the same feelings about that area just really validates, your own experience. And, it's a journey. Over time, you get more comfortable. And now I have less, I guess, hesitance about a scar peeking out of a dress or something like that. You always think, "Oh, somebody's gonna notice a dimple in my breast in the corner in this beautiful dress I have." No, they're not. They're looking at the rest of you and what you represent,
Mhm.
And they're never gonna call you out about it. Like, that is the most weird, irrational fear, and if they do, then they're a bad human.
Yeah, it's just representation of them,
Uh-huh.
not you.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Virginia, you seem to be in such an incredible place mentally and emotionally when it comes to everything you've been through, your scars, your surgery,
Mhm.
your survivor's journey. What has helped you? What did help you throughout this entire healing process? What was the thing that really got you through it all?
Yeah, I mean, it's been an evolution, and I really say, like, well, I'm definitely involved as a person, but what I did and what helped me was different in every phase of the way, right? So, starting with active treatment, I think you've gathered from our conversation so far, I'm a type A personality. Like, I was reading about my disease. I was talking to other patients that I got to know through my own network who were generous to tell me about their experience. I listened to podcasts. I went and saw a different bunch of different doctors. Like, that was my process that I needed to do. And I was also learning about prevention, right? So I think unearthing all these things like hidden lifestyle factors and toxins in my environment were practical things that I could hold on to and act on, that gave me some sense of control in a time when you feel like everything's out of your control, right? Control of your outcome, right? So I think, like, in the active phases of treatment, it was learning about things, sharing with my close friends. Wow, did you know about this? Did you know about this? And, you know, it was shocking, kind of, honestly. But then also doing for myself, like switching out my beauty products and, switching to a clean, more plant based diet and, you know, removing toxins wherever I could, like, helped me feel like that healing journey was starting like right away. And of course, I would, in the beginning, I also took advantage of the social worker, like the free social worker at my cancer center, to when I just felt like it was just too much. And it took me a while to reach out and make that connection. But when it when I was in chemotherapy, like, yeah, that's when I needed to have that conversation. And it really helped me a lot. I also took advantage of classes that were taught by some of my physicians in partnership with local nonprofits about growing resilience after breast cancer and, facilitated discussion with other survivors about like, just life
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and all that. And that really helped me. I took a class about learning about chemotherapy and what that actually did to my body scientifically and how I could overcome some of the crazy side effects I was experiencing, like brain fog and, giving me practical tools. I think, in active treatment, reaching out and, finding out what was available to me through my practitioners, being hands on through
Yeah.
with my care and stepping outside of my comfort zone and signing up for some of these classes. Like I wanted all the woo woo, like I wanted all the Western medicine,
Yeah.
but I also wanted all the complementary medicines like acupuncture and Reiki and, meditation. I really felt a lot of calm and rehabilitation through yoga. So those were like my rituals as I was kind of going through
Mhm.
active treatment. The other thing too, I will say is I held it too close to the vest in the early stages of my diagnosis, but when it was time to get my major surgery, I did put it on my social media and I needed people to know, people that cared about me that I wasn't in
Yeah.
touch with all the time. I needed them to know and I needed more support and I was scared. So putting it out there opened myself up to just so much support and love in a way that I just could never have imagined. And so, that was my first step in terms of talking about it and sharing. And then I would say over the next 5 years, which sounds like a long time, but over the next 5 years, because I'm 6 years in survivorship now, I have again continued to put myself in, push my comfort, push my boundaries, go to retreats for cancer survivors. I mean, went on a fly fishing retreat for cancer survivors. I
That's
went
so
to a
cool.
breast cancer summer camp, which is actually where I met you,
Mhm.
Christina, with 600 other women. But I mean, my goodness, for me, it's like connecting with other people that have a shared experience. It doesn't matter like what walk of life you come through. There's this level of humanity and sharing that is just so beautiful. And we help each other out, right? We share tips and advice. We talk about the effed up thing that maybe a family member said to us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
People
Mhm.
are just clueless. So we joke and we lament about those things, but I think those conversations and going, creating those opportunities for learning and also building community for myself over the years has continued. I'm like a lifelong learner, so I really enjoy opportunities to learn about new research and, so where there are panel discussions at these various events that I go to, I soak that stuff up and it
Mhm.
gives me hope about, our future. And as a patient, you're always so concerned about a recurrence, right? Even if you've done all of the things, like that's the unfair thing about cancer. It's like you could do everything right. And then for some reason, it ends up coming back anyway. And that feels like so deflating and
Yeah.
scary. But I think for me, it's having more conversations. These are all the things I continue to do for myself along the way and how I feel about the experience evolves over time, right? When you go through this, you end up, I mean, I ended up becoming an open book. Not everybody's like that. But for me, talking about it, writing about it through my business, also curating products for our website, I had it in my mind that I had learned so much from this experience. And, I was the girl that dressed up for the doctor's appointments because I had this crazy head of hair. So I was
Yeah.
tucking it under hats and scarves and I wore wigs and big earrings and bright lipstick and matching my hat, my shirt, and all the things. So people kept saying to me, have you thought about doing this for other people? And enough times when people
Mhm.
suggested that, I finally just internalized that. And I thought, well, you know what? I do have a background to put together a shopping website where women can find like, curated essentials to support them through every step of the way. I mean, if you're in surgery, you need button front pajamas, you need zip front hoodies, you need cute loungewear so people can come and visit you, but you're covered up and feel somewhat put together. And you need the recovery pillows, the drain holder, like there's real practical needs. And then during chemo, it's like the hats, the scarves, the wigs, the big earrings, the anti-nausea bracelets,
Mhm.
motivational things with motivational sayings. You got to
Yeah.
dig deep when you're in the throes of that and like feeling awful and just have something to look forward to. So I found that I was shopping for all these different things. So, wow, could I use my experience working in e-commerce and retail to curate a store that just had a modern, more youthful assortment than some of the other options? The place where I would want to shop would just take a little bit of the burden off of already this super overwhelming time.
Mhm.
And could I create a destination for her to learn about all those little nuggets of wisdom that you gain as a patient as you're going through each step of the way? There's just a lot that you don't hear in a doctor's office. And if you're lucky, like I was, you might get connected with other survivors to give you those nuggets of wisdom. But so many times you don't find out about it until after the fact. And you're thinking, God, my quality of life could have been a little bit better if I had known about X, Y, or
Mhm.
Z. So I just want to empower women with those nuggets of wisdom. And I'm also working with medical practitioners, of course. That was the inspiration for our website that we created, which is shopping and knowledge sharing, community building, and then giving back to nonprofits that help patients with, practical needs and services and helping to fund research. So I created this business, in 2022. So midway, throughout my healing journey in birthing this baby.
Mhm. It is your baby,
Yeah.
100%.
Teaching this toddler how to walk and, introducing my baby to the rest of the world. That has really helped me heal. It was very important to me as I was casting the models for our website to cast other survivors. I wanted to show people who were thriving after breast cancer and a way to hopefully make it a little less scary. So that's who we are and what we do.
And I have to say, you have done it so well. For there to be a place where people can get everything all in one, and it's beautiful and it feels inviting and warm and gives you information, but it's not overload. I could think of nothing more appealing or necessary as a patient. So if anyone listening is going through a similar journey, definitely check out Stage because you will find so many resources and items that you need there. This is such a beautiful story because it ends with such a gift to the world, and you are in
Agreed.
such an amazing place. If you could give any advice, Virginia, to someone who is going through something like this,
Yeah.
I mean, my advice is go check out Stage. But what is your
Yeah.
advice because you know it firsthand?
I mean, take it day by day. In the early phases of a diagnosis, it is very overwhelming. There's a lot to know. Don't get ahead of yourself. But learn about your disease, seek out resources, get the opinions so that you feel comfortable in the decision that you're making. And then just allow yourself to do less. Slow down, give yourself that grace. And if you're comfortable, make yourself available to help from other people. I was such an independent girl living on my own for many years. I didn't ask for help from a lot of people, but I think I, made myself available for support from others, in a way that I never had before. And that not only helped me tremendously, it helped my friends get through it with me too, because they felt like they could help me. And I think the thing that I want people to know is support, whether you're a supporter or whether you're a patient. There are so many ways to show up for somebody that is going through this. It can be a ride to an appointment. It can be coming over and watching funny movies with somebody and not talking about breast cancer for the day.
Mhm.
It can be giving a ride to somebody's kids or bringing a meal, babysitting for them for, a period of time. It could be going to an appointment with them and sitting in because it's dizzying, obviously. I always brought a friend or family member and we compared notes after we would come out of the appointment. And then,
So smart.
Such a
sometimes
good
I'd even,
idea, yeah.
they would even take notes for me so that I could make
Mhm.
sense of it all. You're so emotional during that time. You're like, wait, what did they say? I didn't hear
Right.
that. And then when somebody else was in the room, they were like, well, actually, they said this. And that's just all goes into the process of making the best decision. I think your self care is your health care. And you have to remember that survivorship is a lifelong journey. People think that when you're done with active treatment, the healing ends. And frankly, that is when the healing begins. Be unabashed about taking care of yourself, protecting your mental health, shutting out the noise of unhealthy influences, and doing what feels good to you because you've got one life to live. And, you know, there's a lot to be taken from this experience. For me, I definitely feel like I evolved as a person. I evolved how I show up in the world, but then also I'm way more empathetic and, than I ever knew to be, I guess, frankly. You realize there are so many people that are look fine on the outside and really struggling with something serious
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
inside. That evolution process, for me was very productive, evolving the way that you care for yourself and keep coming back to that. Always remember to come back to yourself and give yourself rest because our bodies are not invincible, right? But they're cancer fighting machines if you just give it the right environment to be able to do that.
I love that. Yeah, it's such an important piece of advice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
honestly, I admire you so much. Every time I hear about you, I fall a little bit more in love with you. And then hearing this
Oh,
conversation and how you've approached, honestly, the whole experience. I mean, it's such a scary thing. And for you to dive in and do all this research and educate yourself and be prepared, it's the opposite of the way most of us react to scary things. Most of us just like shut down, and you have gone head in. And then you've created the most beautiful thing with Stage to help others. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. You're really an inspiration.
this was
No.
a great story. We're so happy to have had you here today.
Well, I really appreciate you giving me this platform, and I feel the same way about you guys. Thank you for what you're doing. I'm happy to be part of your circle.